This session will be led by Charlie Crabtree, who's the Marketing and Communications Lead at Keyring. How are you today, Charlie?
Morning, I'm really well, thank you.
Good, pleased to hear that. So I'm just going to quickly say a few more words to position your session, and I'll hand over to you, Charlie. So those of you who don't know, Keyring is a charity that supports people to build their independence in the local community. And Charlie spent the last 18 months to support people to be more digitally connected. So she's really been at the heart of some of the issues we're going to be talking about today. And Charlie's going to take the story from when Charities Against Hate was first conceived by a coalition of charities back in July 2020. And I'll be back at the end to chair any questions. So over to you now, Charlie.
Okay, thank you. See. So can I just check, can you see my slides okay?
Yep, that looks great.
Thanks, Jonathan. Okay, so as Jonathan's already mentioned, I'm going to be introducing you to what Charities Against Hate is, how it came into being and what it's achieved throughout the last 18 months. I'm joined by Harriet and Bill, who are also part of Charities Against Hate movement, and they'll tell you a little bit later on about why their organisations became involved in Charities Against Hate. So there's the hashtag there, which is CAH Live. If anybody wants to tweet or share any comments on social media, please do so. Okay, so it all started so on June 17th in 2020, which is only last year. How bizarre, time seems to be moving very differently at the minute. A coalition of organisations called on Facebook's advertisers to hit pause on ad spending on Facebook and Instagram for the whole of July 2020 to demand that Facebook address racism across their platforms. This was via the Stop Hate for Profit campaign, and there were over 1,000 companies that took part in this boycott. And many of us as comms leads or marketing leads had our charities had our leadership team saying to us, well, what should we be doing? Should we join the boycott? And we all felt, yeah, we should be doing something, but we just weren't sure exactly what that should be. And for some charities, it didn't sit well to join the boycott. And for some others, it was a really valuable funding stream to be using Facebook throughout the whole month of July. And the idea of stopping that for the whole month of July was just, it was too much, and it would have been a real impact on the revenue. So the irony is that actually the discussion about what we should do and whether other charities were boycotting Facebook was a hot theme in Facebook, in the comms groups. And what happened was Parkinson's UK led a meeting where over 90 participants discussed how we could proactively make a change to what was going on without missing out on that vital fundraising revenue in a way that would also fit in with our charitable aims. And overwhelmingly, participants wanted to see a change. So on the back of that, 37 UK charities came together and released a statement. And we said, we believe that it's time for social media platforms to be better and do better by the people who use them. It's time for them to take action to make their platforms more inclusive, a place for connecting and debate, not hate. And as charities, we recognise that these platforms have a role to play in allowing us to connect with supporters and beneficiaries. But we also know that it is not enough is being done to stop posts which incite hate and violence being made visible. No one should have to see these messages in their day-to-day lives, and especially not when they are trying to access ongoing information and support like what we provide as many of our charities. So we pledged together that we would take stock of what was happening. We'd scale back our social media spend where we could during the month of July, and we'd review our ethical marketing policies and see how these align with those of our partners. We'll make recommendations and empower people to share their story. And overall, what we were looking to do was to influence change through proactive action. So not much has changed about why we came into being. We're still a collective of UK charities, and we're working together. We still have around 40 organisations that are signed up. Some are more proactive and involved than others. The way we work at the moment, we've got 7 work streams and we've got a steering group. The steering group come up with wonderful ideas like, let's have a Charities Against Hate live event. And they also make sure things are moving forward. So I think they're doing all right, because this is a really big event, and hopefully it's one that's really helping people to understand what we're doing. So at that point, I just wanted to just ask you why you're here. So I want to know a little bit more about your motivations for engaging with Charities Against Hate. And I just would really appreciate if you could pop a couple of words in the chat. This could be based on previous experience or absolutely anything. I'd just love to hear from you about if you've got some experiences of hate online, or if there's a particular passion that's driven you to be here today. I will have a look. I'll keep an eye on the chat. Oh, Louise Brown says, we're adopting your guidelines for the wellbeing of our social media moderators. Thanks, Louise, that's great to know. I'll come on to the guidelines in a little bit. I'll talk people through those guidelines a bit. While we're waiting for people to put some comments in the chat, Harriet, I'd like to introduce you, please. Harriet is representing the U3A movement. And are you okay to tell us a bit about why U3A joined?
Sure. Hello, everyone. I'm Harriet. I'm a policy officer representing U3A. It's a UK-wide cooperative movement of mostly older adults who come together to learn in a friendly and informal environment. So why are we involved in Charities Against Hate? Well, we joined right from the beginning because we think it's important for older people's voices to be included in this discussion. So both in how hate is experienced, but also in identifying solutions. So you may think that older adults aren't online, but actually about half of people over 65 use at least one social media site, Facebook and YouTube being the most popular. So social media is an important option for older people to continue to connect, and it's important, really important, and it's a safe space. So it's great to be part of Charities Against Hate, and we look forward to what's next.
Thank you. Oh, sorry, bear with me. Oh, there we are. Apologies, I'm having small problems with my slides. So this is Bill from Stop Hate UK. Bill, are you okay to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about why Stop Hate UK got involved?
Yeah, fine. Thanks, Charlie. Morning, everybody. My name's Bill. I work for Stop Hate UK. My job title at the moment is No Hate Speech Services Manager, which means that I'm directly involved in online hate on a daily basis as part of my job. We've been around for about 26 years, providing services to people who are affected by hate crime. So that's very much around giving people a confidential conversation to see whether or not they want to report what's happened to them, or whether they need information or support or a referral to another agency. So we've been around for quite a long time. We work right across the protected characteristics under the Human Rights Act. As I said, I've been involved for the last 5 or 6 years now in the online space, leading small teams, sometimes as low as 2 people. So at the moment, that's where we are as an organisation, and that can be quite isolating. So that's one of the reasons I think, you know, I've been interested in getting involved in Charities Against Hate. We were late to the party, and therefore one of the reasons, you know, I'm really interested in today is I need to be up to speed with developments. But I think it's a really positive initiative. Collective voices are always louder, and I think, you know, the diversity of the people involved is a real asset in terms of ensuring that all of those different experiences are mirrored in the work that we do. So I think it's quite an exciting and really important initiative. I'll leave it at that for now. Thanks, Charlie.
Bill, I'm just going to take this opportunity before I tell you why Keyring got involved to have a look at some of the comments on the chat. So yeah, there's quite a few of you that have said you're actually interested because it's had some impact. Francis says, I work as a mentor with young people, so I'm interested in what's been going on. so I can help support these young people better. Francis, you might be interested in Lydia's session a little bit later on. Lydia works for the Young Women's Trust, so that she's probably got some insights that she can share with you. There's some anxieties around the amount of hate that's showing up in Facebook feeds. Yeah, I agree. It's incredibly difficult to know how to react to it. Again, there's some guidelines on that, which I'll come on to. It's really interesting seeing some of the work that's going on. I'm just scrolling through the comments now. Yeah, Jonathan was saying he's got personal concerns about the damage social media can cause, as well as my organisational role promoting the use of digital technology. Hate speech every day on our channels. Yeah, thank you for all these comments. If I haven't read them out, then please do know that we're going to be sharing some of these comments, and we'll be drawing on them. Moira says she works for a social justice NGO in South Africa, Corruption Watch, the local chapter of Transparency International. I'm very interested in reviewing your guidelines, as we often experience hate in response to our campaigns on social media. Yeah, brilliant. I think you'll find them really useful, Moira. Thank you for your comments. If you do have more comments, please do keep sharing them. I'm getting a little bit of feedback there. I don't know whether you can hear it your end. Right, I'll carry on. So for us, we're a social care charity, and we support people to build independence, as Jonathan said right at the beginning. The people that we work with may have a learning disability or mental health issue, or they may be experiencing homelessness, or they might just need some support to build their independence. And part of how we do support people is by connecting them with each other and the resources in their community. And our vision is for a welcoming world with communities that celebrate the skills and talents of everybody. Now, if nothing else, the pandemic highlighted the fact that community is not just in person. Digital connection is such an important part of life, and it's such an important part of our strategy going forward. There are lots and lots of barriers to connecting online, but being afraid of being abused online should never have to be one of those barriers that people face. So we've been doing a lot of work with our local communities, and we thought it was well worth doing some work with the digital communities that our members engage in, people we support engage in. We've got a big heart, but we're not particularly well known, especially when it comes to having influence over digital platforms, online platforms. So we took the chance to join Charities Against Hate so that we could amplify our voice through other charities as well. So, can I just ask, Jonathan, were you getting feedback there at all?
I was getting a little bit of feedback. Yeah, I'm not sure quite where from though, because I can see we're all muted.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
I think it might have been coming from your slide, Charlie, because as soon as you changed slides, it stopped.
Yeah, okay. I think I brought up the wrong slides.
Don't worry.
I may be using the slides that have a recording over them.
That's okay, don't worry.
Bear with me 1 second. Sorry about this. Jonathan, do you want to maybe have a look at some of the chat comments while I just have a look at this and see if I can just rectify the problem on my end?
Yeah, sure, no problem. So yeah, I'm just going to pick out a couple more. So we've got Katie. Yeah, Katie just talking about her role at Wikimedia, Wikimedia UK, which is the Wikipedia project over in this country, and its sister project. So she's describing that as being, obviously they're very digital, they're entirely digital, but quite controversial. So she's looking for tips and strategy they can use on their social media. Moira works for a social justice NGO in South Africa called Corruption Watch, which is the local chapter of Transparency International. So she's really interested in reviewing the guidelines and how she can use them, because they get a lot of hate in response to their social media campaigns. There's some really interesting feedback there already, that I see your slides are up now, Charlie. Does this mean you're ready to resume onwards?
Yeah, hopefully. Sorry about that. I practiced in advance. I'm recording myself practicing, and apparently I've been playing the recording back to you, so I sincerely apologise for that. So we've been looking at how we came together as a movement. Now I want to look at some of the things that we've achieved. All of the resources that I mention here are on charitiesagainsthate.com. That's charitiesagainsthate.com. You'll hear that more than once. We're more than 1 year on now, and it's important for you to know that nobody is paid by Charities Against Hate. Everyone involved has either given their time voluntarily or their charity has donated their time to the cause. Everything we've achieved has been driven by the passion in our original statement and the passion of the charities that are involved. So I just want to put out a massive shout out to every one of the charities that's donated the time of the people that are involved, people that you see today, the people that you don't see that are behind the scenes, and all of those that donate their time willingly as well. So thank you so much. We're all driven by the fact that platforms should be more inclusive, a place for connecting and debate, not hate. And now the slides aren't moving. There we go. So one of the first things that we did was we split the workload through our work streams, and we could use everybody's skills in a really inclusive manner. We've been a very collaborative effort all the way through. What we wanted to do was just check where we were going, the direction that we were heading in, check exactly what the baseline was for what we were working on. So we did a survey to start off with, and we had 423 respondents. We did 3 surveys. One was for the beneficiaries of the charities, one was for supporters of our charities, and one was for the staff. And that helped us to understand where to go next. So one of the questions that we asked in the survey was, have you ever experienced online hate? And I'm just going to run a poll now and ask you exactly the same question. Have you ever experienced online hate? And I'm wondering, yes, directly, so it's been aimed at you. Yes, indirectly, so you've seen it aimed at other people. No, I'm not sure, or I don't use online platforms, which I know there are some people who just stay away from them altogether. Please do just pick one of the choices. Should be live now. Yeah, seeing a lot of responses saying that people have experienced it indirectly, and some direct impact as well. I'm glad we added the I don't use online platforms, because there's actually a few people who do not use online platforms, and I can well understand that, especially if you do that in your day-to-day work life as well. Let me just show you. So from our point of view, 81% of the beneficiaries that we surveyed had either experienced or witnessed online hate. It's 81%. I think we're at 67% in our in this poll here. 81% of the people. I mean, that just showed that there really is a problem and there is something that needs to be done about it. Just in case you can still see the survey online, you might need to just click off it. If anybody's got a problem, just put a note in the chat. The other thing we asked was, we asked the staff whether they'd received any training to support them in dealing with online hate, and 70% said they hadn't received any training. So we knew that there was maybe a gap in the market for some sort of training, some sort of support around that. So we created a guide to best practice in ethical digital marketing and communications practices. So one of the work streams focused on this guide, and we wanted to make a lasting change. It's intended, this guide is available on our website, charitiesagainsthate.com, and it is free. Anybody can access it, anybody can adapt it for what they need. It's intended for anyone working in social media, digital marketing and communications within the charity and third sector. It is not intended to be prescriptive or compulsory, but it gives some guidance and a framework that you can adapt as you require. I'm going to go through some of the recommendations, But as I said, you can find the full document on the website. So the first tip is to engage. So visibly engage with hate speech on your charity-owned channels, and where appropriate, address the issues. Don't hide it, don't remove it. Show that you champion the groups that you support. Stand by your charitable aims and values and make a stand against divisive comments. Educate the commenter. It's quite a lot of the times it comes from a place of ignorance, and let them know though that you have a zero tolerance of abuse. Of course, if it persists, you may need to remove them, but keep their comments up. This is what we strongly recommend. It shows that you take them seriously and you stand with your beneficiaries. Be respectful, but don't apologise. Don't be apologetic about anything. And look at your tone of voice guidelines. Do they support you in this approach? If they don't, you might need to amend those. Report the comments to the online platform. The only caveat to not removing the hate speech is if it names an individual. So you may decide to remove the comments then. Respect privacy when marketing to people, so consider your remarketing practices. Remarketing, just to let you know, is the practice of allowing advertising networks to track which users have engaged with your content online or visited pages on your website. Show inclusivity, so promote positive, diverse and inclusive content on charity-owned channels that represent your audiences, and provide support. Ensure adequate wellbeing support is in place for social media moderators. So for those leaders that are on with us, I think it's important to note that actually there are times when as social media moderators it can become quite overwhelming, so we need to provide support to those teams. There are huge teams in some charities, and in other charities it is just a small part of a marketing job or comms job, and actually that small part can really take over your life and it can really impact on your well-being, so just be mindful of that. I thought this is outside the charitable sector, but I thought this was a great example of a challenge. So Yorkshire Tea had engaged with the hate, and you could tell that this social media team felt supported and that they knew exactly how they should be responding. So just to read out, Laura, who by the way her account is now suspended, put, "I'm dead chuffed that Yorkshire Tea hasn't supported Black Lives Matters." And Yorkshire Tea replied with, "Please don't buy our tea again. We're taking time to educate ourselves and plan proper action before we post. We stand against racism." Yorkshire Tea, interestingly, recently became the latest sponsor to end their partnership with Yorkshire County Cricket Club over the racism case involving former player Azim Rafiq. The other interesting thing about this particular post was that PG Chips also jumped on the back of it and said, "You know what, don't buy our tea either." So I thought it was a really good example of how it's okay to support each other despite being competitors at various different points. Okay, the document then goes on to remind you to remember your cause. So consider what your societal issues to campaign at. So consider what your charity objectives, values are when you're deciding what societal issues to contribute towards and to influence. Does it fit with what you're delivering as a charity? So when I was considering, does my getting involved in the Charities Against Hate movement, does that fit with our objectives as a charity? And I did. I felt that it fit with our strategic objectives. It felt with our need to engage people with their communities, whether they be face-to-face or online. Sign up to the Conscious Advertising Network and commit to their manifestos. Diversify your advertising. So one of the things I said at the beginning was that for a lot of us, the thought of stopping Facebook advertising was a major issue. A third of organisations are too dependent on one revenue stream. So by diversifying your advertising, it just limits that risk. And finally, engage your partners. So if you're working with partners and agencies, ensure that they're adopting a similar approach to ethical marketing. Create clear policies, communicate your values, and establish strong relationships. We used stories from people. So we got some of the stories through from our survey. And we know the best way to influence an audience is to tell them a compelling story. And you're going to hear more about stories later on today, and the impacts of hate on people's lives. But we're still really interested in hearing stories. So if you do have any stories, please do share them. You can use the hashtag share your story. And if you tag us in, Charities Against Hate. I've put up a really short soundbite where somebody said it's just mentally exhausting to constantly read hateful posts, not even directed at me, but to other people. And it's exhausting thinking about how to engage with that behaviour in a constructive way. And it's even mentally exhausting if you decide to walk away from it. And that's just if you're witnessing it. People told us if it was aimed at them, when they directly experienced it, they became disengaged and demotivated. It impacted directly on their well-being. And time and again, we heard that even when they wanted to do something about it, they weren't sure what they could do or even should do. And so platforms need to step up and support their users in creating online communities that are inclusive and welcoming. So to help that, we created product recommendations. These product recommendations went to MPs, devolved regional administrations, and have been used in the formation of our development of our response to the online safety bill, which again, you'll hear more about a little bit later on. So these product recommendations, sorry, how am I doing for time? Yeah, I'm fine. Okay, so accountability, decency, and support. So improve existing infrastructure through the accountability, tackle and remove content or activity that harms individual users, evaluate for discrimination, conduct independent audits, audit removed content so that appropriate remedial action can be taken. So don't just remove it and then not look back on it, learn from it. Collaborate with charities, particularly those that work with underrepresented groups that are often targets of hate speech and discrimination. And this leads me to a bit of a ask for help as well, which again, I think we'll be covering a little bit later on, but we do need to ensure that those underrepresented groups are represented in the Charities Against Hate movement. So please do check out charitiesagainst-hate.com and drop us a line if you'd like to become involved. Work across platforms, make the internet safer. So share it, share what you're learning. That should come before competition, and commit long term. So a commitment is for life, not just for Christmas. Decency, remove hate groups, have stricter penalties. Lifetime bans should be considered at a far earlier stage than they currently are. Use informed research, prevent the amplification of hateful content. I don't know about you, but there are algorithms that once you see something, they just seem to amplify it. And I find that with some of the people that we support, they go down one track and then they see that same thing over and over again in a different format. Develop systems that automatically flag content, and that should be looked at consistently throughout. Technology advances so much on a week by week basis, so we need to keep learning and keep improving. And another thing is to apply all rules equally. Politicians, brands, news outlets, and public figures should not be exempt and should be held accountable when it comes to spreading hate and misinformation. Donald Trump. Apply profanity filters as well. Support and establish expert teams, provide access to real people. There are so few industry sectors or companies who do not have established ways for victims of a product to seek help. I don't know about you, but getting hold of an individual on Facebook is quite difficult, even when you're advertising through them, spending money with them. It's extremely difficult. And the final thing that I just wanted to flag up on our website, charitiesagainst-hate.com, did I mention it? Is that we've got lots and lots of resources. So our teams have pulled together tons of resources. So if you're ever looking for anything that might help to back up what you're saying, then do check that out. Check out the library on there. And finally, there is a tiny URL link for the Join Us page on our website. And I've noticed that there's a few Q&As come through, so I will hand back to Jonathan and ask my colleagues Bill and Harriet to help me in the any questions section.
Hi, thanks Charlie, Bill, Harriet. Yeah, it's been really great to kick us off and just explore what's been done already and where things have got to. As you say, there's loads of questions coming in, so I want to leap straight into those. Just working out. I'm just going to take them in order to start with. So these are mainly anonymous. So I always get apprehensive responding to online hate on behalf of my charity, as what if it just enables the person? What is the best way to limit a continued conversation? And maybe I'm going to go to Bill. I'm going to let you have a little rest, Charlie, because you've had to work really hard on this session. You can come back in as well. But Bill, do you want to start off on that one?
Yeah, I think, I mean, I'm looking at all of these questions and they're all quite difficult without real examples, at least for me. But these are things that I do in my day job. So I should be sitting here as an expert and not feeling like an imposter. One of my tactics, particularly with this issue, is to invite email conversation. I'm old school, I'm analog, and I don't like text limitations when I'm replying to people when things are quite complex. So inviting somebody that is being a nuisance online to write by email to give them an opportunity to articulate the detail of their concern and to give yourself an opportunity to have a bit of reflection before you respond, because it's quite pressurized in a live environment. And I think that, for me, certainly contributes to my anxiety and my apprehension, is I'm thinking really fast and I'm reacting to something. So trying to divert the conversation. I think as well, lots of open questions, although again, that's not closing down a conversation, it's opening a conversation. But sometimes people who are behaving maliciously just want to score a point, and therefore by asking them to clarify what they're saying, sometimes they do just literally disappear from the online space. I don't want to ramble too incoherently, so I'll give other people an opportunity to respond.
I think you did, yeah, really good suggestion there. Anything from Harriet or Charlie to add? You don't have to, we can move on, but Harriet, yes.
Well, I just noticed a question about we work with the elderly and have to deal with online hate too often. How can we start to put an end to this? Well, I'm not quite sure how we put an end to it, but I mean, I certainly work with older people. Unfortunately, on our social media groups, we haven't actually experienced any online hate. So I'm really pleased about that. But I'm also interested in sort of ageism and how that, because I noted, well, Bill, you might have something to say about that age isn't a characteristic in the Crown Prosecution Service guidelines, so you can't actually record crimes against older people. So I'm wondering what that means in terms of online hate. So a question back to you, Bill.
Well, certainly at Stop It UK, we're not that exclusive when it comes to the 5 protected characteristics. So we would take calls from and support people who are being abused online or offline because of perceptions of their age. So that wouldn't particularly prohibit support and action from an organisation like ourselves, but it does obviously affect whether or not what's happening to them is designated as a hate incident or a hate crime in terms of the law. I wouldn't worry too much about that. At the end of the day, the operative element of that designation is really to enhance the sentence at the end of the process, as well as to go on record. So, you know, if you're working with an organisation like Stop It UK, it's still being recorded. But, you know, I am really concerned about older demographics and their vulnerability generally around the online space. I think there's a lot of emphasis on young people, quite rightly, because they're the future. But, you know, if I think about my own personal experience and my contemporaries and people older than me, like my parents, I use my mum as a perfect example of somebody that's vulnerable online at 85, but uses it on a daily basis. So I think one of the ways that we address online hate aimed at older people is by supporting them, is by raising their awareness and providing the same sort of training around critical thinking and safety online that we're providing to younger demographics. Again, I'm rambling, I apologise. Over to somebody else. Give somebody else
That's great.
Step in.
I'm going to jump onto a kind of a related question, actually. So Mike saying, how do we ensure that challenging hate doesn't cancel the debate? I think, you know, I think we've all probably seen around the pandemic in particular, there's been quite a lot of debate around things like vaccines. And the debates get very, very passionate. But some of the points on both sides are valid. You know, obviously vaccines do have some side effects, albeit they affect a small number, but they do offer a lot of protection. So both sides want to make a point. So how do we ensure that the valid debate happens without it descending into the kind of like, you know, you're a mass murderer if you administer a vaccine, which I have personally seen expressed online and is, you know, frankly, well, insulting and ridiculous. So how do we ensure that remains a valid debate?
I think there's something about freedom of expression, isn't there? That freedom of expression versus hate speech. And I think it's essentially, if you're encouraging hatred or targeting a particular group or individual's identity, that's when it stops becoming a freedom of expression and starts becoming something that we should not be allowing on our platforms. And we have a responsibility as charities to really nip that in the bud and respect each other's rights. But we do need to encourage those debates as well. We need to encourage, but it's that balanced thing. I think for me, particularly the pandemic, one of the things that I've noticed is that as soon as somebody gets that message about, oh, it's really dangerous with all these conspiracy theories about the jab, actually it perpetuates those same messages coming forward. And for some reason that's all they see, whereas they're not getting that balanced debate. And I think actually we need to encourage that balanced debate and provide platforms that do encourage that balanced perspective and provide both those contexts. And I think that the online platforms need to play a part in that, and if it's happening in our feeds, we need to play a part in that as well. So if people are saying something, we can say, well, yeah, that's valid, but this is the facts behind it, and here's the other facts that you need to know.
Yeah, so you're stressing the importance of getting the facts out, which I think Mike actually did refer to in the second part of his question as well. Combating the ignorance through sharing the facts, which I think, yeah, that's a really important point.
And I think as well, it's important to point out that sometimes we just don't know, and it's okay to say, I don't know, and say, we'll go away and find out, or does anybody else know? Because that's part of encouraging that speech, that open and honest discussion. And I think, yeah, I think we should say we don't know, should be more honest and upfront sometimes. Yeah, okay, thanks. Another anonymous attendee asked, if I see an online hate happening, how should I step in? I think Bill kind of took that really partly with the first question. So unless there's anything else to add, I'll actually move to one of the other questions. Yeah, nobody's looking like they want to jump in. So I think we covered that. Got Katie coming from another perspective. Katie's obviously had some interesting learnings, and she's interested in how she connects with other charities to actually share those learnings and also, you know, learn from their experience as well. I'd say go to charitiesagainst.hate.com and drop us a message and say you want to become involved. We'd love to have you. I think one of the things that Bill particularly pointed out was the fact that it can be quite difficult, and it's nice to be able to engage with other charities and to get their perspective on what's going on, and to build in some ways relationships with other communications professionals. I mean, we've got a wide mix of people as part of the steering group, but we need to look at what we're doing next as Charities Against Hate. So yes, definitely, we'd welcome more people to become involved.
Yes, and there's a whole range of different materials, aren't there? I think Sarah put that into the link. So how to access those materials on the Charities Against Hate site. And we're going to publish those links back into the event site for this event as well. Now we're kind of out of questions. So I'm thinking it might be good to give people a quick break. really thank you, Charlie, Bill and Harriet, for, I guess, kicking us off, explaining what's happened so far in terms of the Charities Against Hate movement. An awful lot's actually been progressed in only a year, but obviously, you know, this is a topic I think we're all going to be working at for a long time. The technology is immensely powerful, and it's always going to be abused by some people, I think. So, you know, it's going to be a role for us and our charities to play for a longer term period as well.